My new address will be someplace on anywhere road. It's the prettiest someplace on anywhere road. And all the millionaires' money couldn't build a better abode than my someplace on anywhere road.
Hi there, I'm David Duncan and welcome to the third series of Bing Crosby, The Hollywood Years, where we'll look at Bing's films from 1950 through to 1957. Now you may be wondering, why only to 1957? Well, after 1957, Bing, who was newly married, concentrated less on film work and more on his personal life. He also focused more attention on television, which resulted in only a handful of Crosby films being released over the next 1.5 decades. So 1950 is the year, and the first film of the decade was actually shot the previous year, and teamed Bing up with the legendary director Frank Capra for a reworking of his classic 1934 film Broadway Bill, under the new title, Riding High. Horse racing had always been a passion of Bing's, so it's no wonder that he was at his relaxed best in this charming and entertaining film. The story has him engaged to the daughter of a business tycoon who insists that Bing gives up his horse racing interests and become president of the family's paper box company.
Won't say that rivers flow, the day turns to night, but darling, I'd say we've got a sure thing all right. Won't say it's winter when snow falls from above, but darling, it's a sure thing we're in love. Maggie,
Darling.
come here.
Now Bing tries to fit in and play the part, but has no intention of giving up his horse. The younger sister of his fiancée, played by Colleen Gray, has developed a lot of affection for him and for his passion of horses, and encourages him to escape from the family while he can.
How do I get out of this box?
Leave Higginsville.
Still in there punching, aren't you?
Huh?
Beginning tomorrow, exclusively paper boxes. Beginning tomorrow, get rid of that horse.
Now things finally come to a head with Bing quitting the family business, but unfortunately this leads his fiancée to call off the wedding as well.
Wait a minute, JL. Wait here. You may be interested to hear that I have no intention of disposing of that horse. Matter of fact, I'm leaving Higginsville in the morning.
Hooray!
And another thing, I wouldn't get rid of that racehorse for you or anybody else in the world. You wait. Someday you're going to take off your hat to Broadway Bill.
Setting off with his horse and his stable hand, played by Clarence Muse, Bing heads for someplace on Anywhere Road.
Oh, yes, boss. Come on, perk up.
My new address will be someplace anywhere road. It's the prettiest someplace on anywhere road.
Anywhere road.
From this point on, the film gallops along with Bing and the supporting players appearing to almost ad-lib their way through to the conclusion, all to the beat of some funny and enjoyable songs written once again by Johnny Burke and Jimmy Van Heusen.
The clocker told Jockey McGee. The jockey, of course, passed it on to the horse, and the horse told me.
The supporting cast are great and include the notable character actors Raymond Walburn, Clarence Muse, Douglas Dumbrell and Ward Bond, Margaret Hamilton, Irving Bacon and Charles Lane, who all appeared in the original 1934 version of the film. Also there's William Demarest, Percy Kilbride, Charles Bickford, James Gleason, Harry Davenport, Gene Lockhart, and a special guest appearance by Oliver Hardy as a frustrated punter. Now, Frank Capra stated in interviews that every actor in his films, no matter how large or small a part, is important to the telling of the story. and this type of scenario is exactly what Bing liked, being surrounded by a range of wonderful, talented actors to help share the load when it came to casting credits. Colleen Gray, who spent most of her long acting career in television, plays her part well as the love interest in the film, and she does a great job singing along with Bing and Clarence Muse while baking a sunshine cake.
We ought to bake a sunshine cake. Oh, we ought to bake a sunshine cake.
What's that? What's a sunshine cake?
Why don't we get the stuff together and demonstrate how to bake us up a sunshine cake?
Now, Frank Capra wanted to film this scene in a natural way and persuaded Bing to sing live on set rather than pre-record the sequence. Now, this can be a challenge for the sound department in trying to get an even balance in the recording, but it allowed for all the cast to be more natural and have fun with the song without having to concentrate on lip-syncing to the pre-recording.
Up,
Up?
oh, we'd ought to bake a sunshine cake. It really isn't so hard to make.
How?
Fresh tears, a pound or two of pleasure. Kind words, you needn't use a measured cup. Oh,
So?
oh, it's not from
Dinner.
a recipe book, and you don't
The chicken.
have to be a good cook or run to the oven to look with such a simple dish. All you do is wish, so why not bake a sunshine cake?
Of course, it may keep your dreams awake.
Friends say there's nothing like the flavor.
Really?
Oh, it's
Don't
grand.
wait to do your friends a favor.
And for goodness sake,
What are we waiting
for? Let's bake a sunshine cake. There they go.
Of course, all this banter leads up to the final big race, which naturally has the gangsters trying to fix things in their favour. But Bing's horse, Broadway Bill, proves to be too good on the day and wins the race. But unfortunately, after crossing the line, tragedy strikes.
Back up that track, will you please? Now, wait. Don't get excited. Keep back. Everybody keep back. Officers.
Too much for him. Burst his heart. He was dead, you might say, when he hit the dirt.
Things, however, come to a happy conclusion as Bing buys another horse and rescues Colleen Gray from the family empire to once again head off on Anywhere Road.
Oh, Dan.
Come on, we're off to Santa Anita.
Bye, Johnson.
All a million
Oh,
years
so glad you came back.
wouldn't build a better abode than that someplace.
Hey! Wait for me!
Now, as bright and breezy as the film appears, it wasn't that way to start with. You see, Frank Capra had never worked with Bing before and was warned that he could be difficult to tie down on a set. That is, he was available mainly on his terms, as stipulated in his contract, with little or no flexibility. Now, with fairness, this was due to Bing's heavy commitments to other ventures such as radio and recordings, plus he very much valued his own recreational time on the golf course and had family commitments as well. That being said, on the first couple of days, Bing was on call for a 9 a.m. start, but didn't make it in until about 10:30, where he found Frank Capra directing scenes with other actors. When Bing asked how they could be filming when he was supposed to be in the first scene, Frank responded that due to the limited budget and tight schedule, he started with whoever was on set at the time. Well, from this point on, Bing was never late and would even show up at Frank Capra's house at 6 a.m. to view the daily rushes. A great mutual admiration developed between the two of them, as being no-nonsense businessmen, getting the job done in the most relaxed and fun way possible, and the results are clearly evident in the final cut of the film.
We'll win enough money to pay the feed man.
He's paid.
No change.
All gone.
I'll bet on the bobtail nag. Oh,
Well, though not a huge financial success, Riding High easily made back its production cost by bringing in more than $2 million at the US box office. And also, Bing and Frank Capra enjoyed working together so much that they organised to team up again the following year. But next up for Bing, it was a remake of the 1935 film Accent on Youth, which was adapted into a light-hearted musical comedy and retitled Mr. Music.
High on the list of beautiful sounds is your sigh, and I know music.
Bing hated the title of Mr. Music because he felt that it big noted himself, and he was sure this was the reason it wasn't a big box office hit. But in truth, the public didn't mind the title at all, and neither did the critics. The film is a perfect example of Bing at his relaxed best, strolling through the story, singing a nice set of songs, once again by Burke and Van Heusen, and bouncing off an array of supporting players and guest stars that's never trying to be anything but good, light-hearted entertainment. The story has Bing playing a successful songwriter who is happy living off his past efforts and spends his days and money playing golf, betting on horses, and wining and dining his fiancée, played by Ruth Hussey.
High on the list of beautiful sights is you, and I've seen Naples. You are a view they can't overrate. I've seen New York from the Empire State.
His very patient long-term producer, played by the wonderful character actor Charles Coburn, is constantly advancing Bing funds as prepayment for delivery of a new musical.
If I was sure that you'd work,
Why don't you hire a cop to watch me or chain me to my piano or something?
I think I prefer the cop.
No, kid,
No, I mean it. Not a real policeman. Just someone to see that you put in a good day's work. A secretary.
Concerned he'll lose his money, an agreement is forged whereby Bing will be paid in advance as long as he accepts the term that a secretary is employed to ensure that he produces the goods, or in this case, the songs.
Just a minute, Paul. First, we must have an agreement. I give you $15,000, and you give me your word that you'll work. And your secretary will help you keep your word. Is it a deal?
It's a deal.
Nancy Olson, fresh from her success in Billy Wilder's Sunset Boulevard, plays a studious college girl who's hired as a secretary and is responsible for making sure Bing delivers a new musical score in a timely fashion. Trying to get Bing to focus on the job at hand, though, is not an easy task, and tensions soon rise between the two. Helping things along, we have Bing's chauffeur and assistant, played by the comedy actor Tom Ewell, who would shortly find success with the Broadway show and the film version of the hit play, The 7-Year Itch.
But honestly, boss, I think a guy cheapens himself when he calls his butler Cupcake. My name is Haggerty.
Glad to know you, Mr. Haggerty.
Adding to the fun, we have the delightful character actress Ida Moore, playing Nancy Olson's Aunt Amy, who is not only chaperone, but is also trying to convince an old friend of hers to invest in the new show.
Aunt Amy, do you think it's possible to fall in love with someone you've known a very short time?
Oh, yes. I fell in love with your Uncle Chester after our second waltz. 8 weeks later, we were married. It was the greatest mistake of my life.
But accidents will happen, and I'll be around, and maybe there'll be no one else but me around.
I like the new words to that song, Mr. Merrick.
Complications arise, however, when Nancy Olson finds herself falling for Bing, even though she has a crush on her fellow college student and football star, Jefferson Blake, played by young Robert Stack.
Mr. Merrick.
Mr. Merrick, it's all I've heard all evening. You in love with that guy?
In love? Oh, don't be ridiculous.
After a while, Bing gets into the creative spirit and writes a whole series of songs which are previewed at a special performance put on at Bing's old college in the hopes that it will attract investors. Now this leads to an array of special appearances by guest stars such as Peggy Lee in her first film appearance,
Yes, life
Life is a gamble and a guess.
is so peculiar. The desert's only got sand.
Life is a puzzle, more or less.
The ocean's only got water.
Oh, life is a wonderful mess.
You never know where you stand.
You're so right.
When we get up each morning,
there's nothing to breathe but air.
The Merry
And
Macs.
we look in the mirror, there's nothing to comb but hair. And if we sit down to breakfast, there's nothing to eat but food. Life is so peculiar, but you can't stay home and brood.
Opera star Dorothy Kirsten.
The likes of you may never be attracted to the likes of me. But accidents will happen, and I'll be around. And maybe there'll be no one else but me around.
And the comedian Groucho Marx.
Give me the lowdown, Brother G. It's so peculiar. It's caviar or it's stripe. Yes, it's as fickle as can be. For life may give you a medal. I've had my chest dripping with them. Then slyly slip you the knife. Oh, my aching back. Life is so peculiar, but as everybody says, that's life is so peculiar, but as everybody says, that's life is so peculiar, but as everybody says, that's life.
In the end, the show secures financing from Aunt Amy's peculiar friend Jerome Thisbe, played wonderfully by the actual director of the film, Richard Haydn, who had starred with Bing a few years earlier in The Emperor Waltz.
Oh, right you are, Mr. Merrick. The two things I abhor wasting most are words and time. I remember a few years ago, I think this may amuse you. It's by no means a vulgar story, though you may consider it a trifle spicy. I was chatting with a young, quite cultured widow. Yes.
That's good. Well, let's get down to business. Paul, look, a certified check.
300,000.
300,000.
I got it right this time. 300,000 grand.
You have to follow your dreams till they all come true.
Well, Mr. Music may not have been a huge success for Bing back in 1950, but it's usually looked upon by fans today with affection due to it being such a typical example of an easygoing Crosby film with nice songs and likeable performances. In fact, Tom Ewell remembered that during filming, he approached Bing and asked how he too could achieve the relaxed Crosby manner. Well, Bing apparently pulled out of his pocket a huge roll of money. He gently tapped it on the top and said, "This sort of helps." Now, before we wrap up 1950, Bing also made an appearance in a short made-for-TV charity film titled You Can Change the World that also featured Jack Benny, Bob Hope, Ann Blythe, William Holden, Irene Dunn and Loretta Young.
Yes, he did, Jack. In fact, that was sort of the inspiration for the song. I hope it fits, Father. In any case, here it is.
The dream I'm building is early American. Something that won't go out of style. It makes you feel that life's worth living the way they must have felt that first Thanksgiving.
Well, although 1950 had not produced any massive money-making films for Bing, his next project would certainly be a bigger hit, and that's what we'll look at in the next episode of Bing Crosby, The Hollywood Years. I'm David Duncan. See you then.